best, desperately trying our best.
Yes, well, first of all, nice to meet you. Ville, how are you?
A pleasure. Oh, I'm all right. I'm all right. It's like getting back onto the saddle. You know, I haven't done this in a long time. So, and had a break for about 5 years. So it's exciting and it's weird and it's a bit nerve-wracking as well at the same time. So it's a good Bermuda Triangle of emotions I'm going through.
Yeah, and your last record was Tears on Tape, right? In 2000.
Yeah, that's nearly 10 years ago. Yeah,
yeah.
It came out in 2013, so it's been a while, and so it took a while. We toured with that album with him, and then through many a twist and turn, we ended up calling it a day. We decided that we kind of like not necessarily lost the spark, but we felt that we couldn't find a direction where to go, and then we thought that we were still in good terms with everybody. You know, everybody was still friends, and we thought that we'd end it with a tour and sort of like end it on a high note, hopefully, you know, and sort of that's how I felt the last tour felt, and that was 2017 on New Year's Eve when we finished that little trek in my life, and right after I worked on a Finnish project by an artist called The Agents, sort of like a retro 50s 60s type of guitar music, very old school, very retro and vintagey and all that. We did an album in my native language here in Finland and toured a bit. There was 2018, we recorded the stuff in like little short spurts, and 2019 the album came out and I toured until September, after which I started working on Noir. It took me ages. I've never done an album by myself, so man, I was slow, and you know, I think the album's good, but the pandemic was quite taxing, and then there was a lot of stuff like there was no record company. I was working a lot of stuff by myself, like the cover artwork, and I found it really interesting to, you know, sort of like misunderstand the word solo album in saying that you really need to do everything by yourself. But I thought it was a special experience. And that's the cool thing about it, you know, to do things that are different. And especially after him, we did that. That was a long story, you know. It took me 25 years, and so it was great to do something that was completely new and exciting and challenging at the same time. So those were the reasons, and for the long break, and to be back all in out.
Yes, well, and this new record, Noir. I must ask you, is that somehow a concept album? What can you say about the theme of the lyrics on the record?
Well, I think it could be like a moth into a butterfly sort of transitional moment in time. You know, it's like a bridge between him and then the future, and it's me trying to find out, I guess, who I am. And by that, it was quite funny to find myself treading the same road, musically speaking, that there's more similarities with the new music than dissimilarities with the him stuff. It's clearly a continuation of the same story, and I'm still using the heartogram with a bit of a twist, and to have the VV in there, my initials. But yeah, thematically, I think I just started working song by song. It was more, I think it was an exercise in existential problematics, meaning that when I started working on the music, I didn't know if I have any in me, if I have any music, if I'm any good. That's very normal for all musicians. It was lacking a lot of self-confidence because I'd never done anything like that by myself. But I had to try. I had to put all my effort, all my energy into it, and that became "Runaway from the Sun." That was the first song I worked on for the album, and thematically, I think it's about trying to figure out when to hold on, when to let go, both in life and in love, and it's about trying to find meaning during pandemic. You know, trying to figure out what's important in life, what you can deal without, and what you cannot live without. For me, it's music. So music was my saving grace, or my, you know, whatever you want to call it, like a lifeline. And it was really important, and I'm glad that it was still there. because you can never tell with music. You can't tell in advance whether there is an album coming out, and you definitely don't know what kind of album. So you just have to follow the inspiration and the muse and let it lead you wherever it might lead you. And so thematically, I think it's quite maybe introspective, and it's quite melancholy, as the music normally is that I enjoy doing. It's quite cinematic at times. It's quite atmospheric. It's maybe a little less aggressive than him. I would think that it's more of an alternative rock album than a metal album. That's how I feel about it. It's a bit more Queens of the Stone Age and Smashing Pumpkins than Type O Negative. To me, like sound-wise and production-wise and all that. So it's a pretty hard-hitting album, but it's very inviting. It's like a warm hug from a vampire.
Fair enough. And any of the new songs were based on personal experience, or the stories just came out in your head, or are there metaphors? The lyrics really happened in your life?
Yeah, I think everything has to be very personal, but at times I think I love dramatic music. I'm a bit of a drama king or a queen or whatever, however you want to put that. But I think big emotions and heartfelt music and singing from the heart and being desperate and struggling to get there, I think that stuff is very important when it comes to music. So it might be that some of the stuff is enhanced. They're blown out of proportion when it comes on the album, like lyrically speaking. But it's all very real, and it's all. And you know, if you read the lyrics, there's a lot of wordplay. I like wordplays. I don't know why, but I like to play around with words and meanings, and I think it could be because I'm not a native English speaking person. So I come from the outsider, so I feel like an outsider when it comes to the language, and that also gives me liberties, because I don't have to give a toss about it. You know, I'm not stuck to my routines. But even though I am, of course, everybody is. But yeah, it's very real. I'm not a fiction writer that I would just come up with a story. It doesn't work like that to me at all. And I think all fiction writers, more or less, they start from personal experience anyway. They just need to make it a bit more interesting or a bit less about me, you know, because at times stories are more interesting when they're told in whatever third person, you know. So but yeah, I think it's important. I've always been a fan of Neil Young and people who are very direct in what they say. You don't have to like all their songs or all their albums, but you can't fault them for being so very honest. You know, that's important.
Yeah, talking about the linguistic side of the record. one title track that I think it's very interesting is the song "Echolocate Your Heart." I mean, this is not something that we
look at your love.
do.
Echolocate your love.
Yeah, echolocate your love. Sorry. So
I thought that's such a cool title for a song. I thought that's very sort of early '80s British. It's like some weird new age post-goth band could have or maybe even. Not necessarily Bauhaus, but you know, like some Bauhaus tribute band might have a song named like that. I love Bats. That's the tribute to all things Gothic. And I think I was watching a documentary about how they navigate, and then I started thinking about navigating in the dark, and thinking about on a more maybe metaphorical level that at times. We do find what we're looking for better when our eyes are closed and when we are in the dark and when we trust our instincts and when we trust our heart, and so like shut the brain off. So those are the kind of things I was thinking about when writing that song. That's what the echolocation stands for me, and it's about trusting your instinct, your guts, and your heart, and not believing what anybody else has to say. I think that's quite juvenile. It's quite punk rock to a certain extent, but it's it's my way of interpreting that emotion.
Yes, and back in him times and now, and you always did amazing lyrics about these themes like love, death, and emotion. So where and when did your interest about this universe of love and death start? Do you feel that you have the same approach from these themes back then and now?
Um, well, that's quite interesting. The sort of like a lot of Finnish literature and a lot of Finnish old school cinema and music especially is very melancholy. It's quite ominous and it can be quite dark, not necessarily depressing, but it's quite dark. And I think that in a lot of the literature, those are the topics, you know, love and death, you know, eros and thanatos, however you want to put it, you know, it's alpha and omega. It's quite a combination, and it's a very inspiring one. And it's quite scary, and it's quite overwhelming, and yet at the same time, it's very fascinating. It's like love and death are like a car crash in slow motion, you know. You know you're not supposed to be looking, but you can't turn your head away. So there's something to be said about that. I think also when I started working with that stuff, I love bands like My Dying Bride, Paradise Lost, Anathema, Typo Negative, and then some of the 80s stuff, Sisters of Mercy and The Fields of the Nephilim and bands like that. And I think I was learning my way of communicating through a song. So as Black Sabbath, of course, and Depeche Mode as well. Their lyrics are very, very interesting and unique, I think. But so I think that I was trying to find my voice, and as I didn't come from an English-speaking family, I had to learn. So it's about how certain sounds, or words, how they sound, how they roll off your tongue, and then it is that juxtaposition that's always been very interesting to me: the light and the dark, and the yin and the yang, and the neon and the noir. And that's followed me throughout the career. I find that somewhere in between those extremes, you know, that's my comfort zone. But it has to be quite extreme, and that's to do with the fact that I enjoy a bit of drama, and stuff has to really feel. And if it doesn't hurt, it's not good.
Yeah, and well, it's been 25 years from the release of your first record with him, right? It's the record Greatest Love Song. Yeah. So first of all, congratulations for all these years. And I must ask you, what are the strongest memories you have from this particular record, the beginning of your career? This is an important mark, right? 25 years.
Well, we'd recorded, we'd made one demo, not a demo, but an EP before that we released in '96, but that was a quick one. And I think that's the time when we started playing our first gigs. We hadn't toured proper, so we didn't know anything about touring. And at that time, people thought that if you're a Finnish band and if you sing in English and you play metal, that there's no way you can succeed in any way or form, and it's a doomed effort. And we didn't listen to those people once again. We just kept on going. And I think the special thing about the first album is the fact that that we didn't know anything about recording an album or really writing songs. So I think there's this endearing naivety about it. It's cool because we were virgins when it came to working on music, and I think you could hear it. The producer, the Finnish guy called Heili, Hiili, he took us by the hand. He was the guy who showed us not to be afraid of the extremes. Go really weird and crazy with guitar sounds and the atmospherics of the album. And I think it was the best start recording wise. There was no pressure from record company because we hadn't sold any records. So it was a great position to be in. All the pressure started later on, but yeah, because it is the very beginning. I do fondly remember a lot of details about making the album, and song wise, you know, there's When Love It Embrace is still one of like my favorites of the songs I've written, and it's still a song we're going to be playing that next year as well. It's going to be part of the so it's funny how music can travel, and how singing a song that I wrote 25 plus years ago can still feel very new, and the emotion can still feel very raw, and it can still mean a lot to me. So it's not just about nostalgia. I think a good song feels current, and it feels that you're in the present any day. So yeah, it's a special album. I think they released like a new vinyl version of the album, and just a couple of months ago, and the it was remastered, and I was listening to the test pressings in the summertime, and it was quite interesting too. I've never really listened to the album in many years, so I thought that was a great first album. It was a bit wild and a bit crazy and uneven, but I think that's exactly how it should be.
Yes, and I was checking your him Spotify account, and the most streamed song from him is the song "Wings of a Butterfly." It's 41 million streams. So why do you think this particular song is the most streamed him song? What memories do you have from writing it?
I think it was sign of the times. A lot of times I don't think it's necessarily just about a song. It's about when it comes out. And we had I remember we just gained a bit of interest and a bit of traction from the people in the UK. So with the previous album, Love Metal, we were touring the UK for the first time, and that was the time when Bam Margera, with whom I became really good friends with from Jackass and from Ville Valo, he started talking about us to everybody in the States, and he started using our music on his like crazy videos and all that stuff. And bit by bit, we were able to tour in the States for the first time, and that's when everything started happening there. And I think as a band, we were kind of on a high when we started working on Dark Lights, the album that had Rip Out the Wings of a Butterfly. And we recorded that in the Silver Lake. And it was produced and mixed by the same guy who mixed Neon Noir. So that's I've known Tim Palmer for a long time. And that was just one of the songs. You know, it was one of the songs on the album. We didn't think that's going to be anything big or humongous, but the timing was right. And it was the only song we really had that was on heavy rotation, like MTV2 or whatever it's called in the States. It was a big deal. But the story of him is funny in a way that let's say there's a song called Join Me in Death. That was really big in Europe, and that was #1 in Germany, and I think Switzerland and Austria and Finland, and I might be remembering a bit wrong some of the things, but it was huge, and that all of a sudden took us from the first album's heavy metal world. That took us we turned into this crossover band. All of a sudden we were in teeny pop magazines as well, which was really weird for our band. So I think that we went through this. The story of him is quite weird in essence. That we went from this sort of pop sensation back to really gothic roots and everything in between. So it's quite special. I don't know why that song is. I think it was same in playing the song in Brazil and playing it in North America as well. That song, for some reason, the timing was right and people go crazy. Oh, they did go crazy when we played that. So let's hope that people will go crazy again when we're going to be playing it next year.
Yes. And Finland is known for having many successful heavy metal bands from different genres. So historically, how was and how is your relation with these the most famous Finnish bands like Nightwish, Children of Bodom, Stratovarius?
Well, Children of Bodom, unfortunately, they are no more because Alexei passed away, and I think I met those people, but in the case of let's say Nightwish, they're not based in Helsinki, and the genre is a bit different. So we didn't get to really play the same festivals. You know, we played rock festivals more or less, and they played like Wacken, like those very metal sort of Manowar, Iron Maiden festivals, and a lot of that stuff happened at the same time. Stratovarius was there a bit before, and they toured South America as well. They were one of the first bands from the metal genre. We had, I think, punk bands like Terveet Kädet, like these bands that Sepultura liked back in the day. They were listening to that sort of Finnish hardcore from I think the 80s. But I've always been laughing that maybe it makes all the sense in the world for Finns to create metal. Is the headbanging keeps us warm. You know, it gets terribly cold in the winter, so it makes all the sense in the world that would be the reason. That's also probably why the Norwegians burn the churches. It's nothing to do with Satanism, it's just that they're cold.
It's the fire.
Yeah.
Okay. And Ville, well, since the beginning of him, you are well known for the quality of your music, of course, but people always comment about the way you look. I mean, people talk about your charm, right? How do you deal with this comment? Is it okay for you to be noticed as a good-looking guy?
I only have my parents to blame if my genes are right. But I always thought that, you know, I felt when I started listening to music, I fell in love with bands like Kiss or Iron Maiden or Wasp and bands like that. And I always thought that it's the whole package. It is the music, it is the image, it's the cover artwork, and it is the T-shirt, and it's everything. It's nice if you're able to build your own world. You're like inviting people to join you in that. Iron Maiden are great in that. If thinking in terms of Eddie and all the great artwork for their covers, and they've had this. They're like the J.R.R. Tolkien of heavy metal. They built this like land that they can call their own, this world, and I think that in that sense, I'm trying to look the part. What I'm trying to do is look like the music, and hopefully the music sounds like me. You know what I mean? Or sounds like how I look. So I've never tried to really put on a persona or create a different personality, like Alice Cooper versus Vincent Fournier, like this very separate personality. So for me, it's always been important to, you know, be who you are. It's quite honest in that sense, and yeah, so it's flattering, you know, that if some people consider me, you know, attractive, but it still doesn't make the song good. But
yeah. And well, you never were into social media stuff, right? I mean, Instagram, Facebook, all of this stuff. Why does this internet stuff never got your attention? Do you feel somehow you don't belong to this world, or is it a waste of time?
Well, you know, I'm so old school that I still believe in imagination, and I believe in stuff that is left for the imagination. So I think that, especially in my world of music, I think there's too much info. People let people know too much about them, and all the info is very fragmented, like little tidbits. You know, I'm not interested in telling people, once again, that I didn't have a breakfast. You know, picture of an empty table, but it's not a way of communicating I feel comfortable with. It's the record company is communicating through Hardogram, the Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, I guess too. I'm not quite sure, but I've always liked artists that are a bit mysterious, and I like that there's a sense of detachment, and that also gives, I think, the people and me as a listener, that makes my imagination to do more work. And I think that when you really start imagining things and you start building ideas about an artist, that's way more powerful and special and unique than the little info on the constant bombardment of info on social media. I understand its power. I do understand the fact that it's so easy for people to communicate, especially if they're far away from each other. It's a great way of doing so, but I just don't feel comfortable. I don't have enough to say, and I think that it easily becomes this game that you start it, you can't stop, and I think that it's better that I keep myself out of. I don't have any passwords or anything like that for Hardogram. I gave them all away. I said I don't want to know them, because I don't want to wake up in the middle of the night and start all of a sudden writing some truths down in all caps, because that's exactly what I probably do, you know.
Okay, and Ville, if you had to pick 5 records that were the most important records that you have listened in your whole life, which ones would be, and why?
5. That's a lot of albums. Ooh. And there's a lot of different genres of music as well. Let's say Bloody Kisses by Type O Negative. They showed me and him a way of combining dark sense of humor with heartfelt lyrics and with music that was both dark and light at the same time. I think that what they did with Bloody Kisses was very special. It's a great album, and it worked as a sort of blueprint. We didn't want to copy the band, but of course we were very, very impressed and very inspired by them at that time. That was a super important album for him. And before that, I would have to say Black Sabbath by Black Sabbath, because through Black Sabbath, they were just from working families. They came from a dirty working city. They weren't like pretty glam boys or whatever. They were tough fellas. And I think what they did with music still resonates today. Such a special album, and the way it starts, and it started a genre of its own. And Black Sabbath have been a constant source of inspiration from the very beginning until today. It's like, that's my thing. If out of all the bands I would have to pick one, it would be Black Sabbath. And the third one, I'm trying to find ways to mix it up a bit. Yeah, let's do something about, let's say, Somewhere in Time by Iron Maiden. That was when they toured that album. The tour was called Somewhere on Tour. They played Helsinki Ice Hall, and they had Wasp were supporting them. And that was the first concert I ever went to. I think it was November '86. And that was the first show I've ever witnessed. And I think that it really stayed. I still have the t-shirt. It's all like filled with holes and it probably doesn't fit me anymore. But that was a start of something else, because I'd only seen stuff on TV. And then all of a sudden seeing Eddie, you know, the sort of like they had this robotic Eddie on stage, and you know, that big show of the '80s, a big '80s show. It was quite a spectacle. That was a cool thing to experience. And then album was, maybe it has to be something, well, let's say something different would be Violator by Depeche Mode. It's tough to pick. They have a lot of good albums, but I think Enjoy the Silence made such a huge impact, song and sound wise. I didn't hear the album when it came out. I heard it later in the '90s, and their songs are somewhat deceptively simple. They sound like they're very simple, but then they have a lot of depth, and they have a lot of twists and turns, and the lyrics are always sending the listener mixed signals. They're very quite hard to understand at times. They're not very clear. They're probably very clear to the songwriter, but I'm a huge fan of his songwriting, and Dave Gahan's voice as well. I think the combination is incredible. And yeah, this is the stuff that was when I started to spread my wings out of and getting out of the metal thing of the '80s. Hold on, that's only 3, or is it 4 already?
I think you need to pick one.
One, okay. So something very, very different. Something very big guitars. Black Rebel, Motorcycle Club, not them, not Smashing Pumpkins necessarily. Something cool and with a little bit heavy duty. Not My Bloody Valentine.
My Dying Bride.
Oh yeah, that'd be good. That's pretty metal. We could do As the Flower Withers. That was a big deal when it came out. I love Turn Loose the Swans as well, and then The Angel and the Dark River. And I do love the EP before As the Flower Withers. But I remember that was the time. I'm not sure if you saw it, but it was Vanessa Warwick had a show, Headbangers Ball, on MTV, and that was the only metal show in the world. And always at the end of the show, I'm not sure how long it lasted, maybe for an hour and a half. There was 10 or 15 minutes segment that was called Into the Pit. And that was the only place in the world where you could see and hear bands like Morbid Angel, Entombed, Cathedral, Confessor, out of all bands, Carcass, all that sort of like heavier stuff, Burton, as well, like the early black metal stuff. And yeah, I remember My Dying Bride. I remember seeing some of the videos and them really making an impression. That was the first band with violin and being like so doomy and gloomy. It was kind of funny and scary at the same time because it was so over the top. But I'm a huge fan of the band, and I did love doomy stuff before, because I think the first modern doom album I heard was which actually could trump My Dying Bride, is A Forest of Equilibrium by Cathedral. I was a fan of Napalm Death before, and then I wanted to follow what Lee Dorian was doing next, and it was quite the difference. You know, Napalm Death played songs that lasted for 2 seconds with the fastest, and all of a sudden Cathedral's first album had these super long songs, and the mood was really drony and depressive and dark, and I love that album. I just love. I bought it on CD. I think on the day it came out, and that's an album I'm still. And I met Lee quite a few times, and we sort of became mates as well.
Wow,
And he's a legend, and he's one of my heroes. As well as, you know, all the stuff Cathedral did later. I think that he's one of the guys also who hasn't been afraid to go by instinct and go and not to really worry about what other people are thinking. I think that's strength and that's courageousness, and that's what I should do more, I guess.
Well, okay, Ville. So thanks for the interview. Thanks,
Excellent.
Sarah, Gabriel. Nice to talk to you, and well, see you in Brazil.
Yeah, I'll catch you later, and yeah, happy holidays and happy New Year as well.
Yeah,
it's only
too.
a month to go. Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah.
Yeah.
You take it easy, man.
Okay, bye.
Bye.